Hello and welcome to Cognitions, speaking the unspeakable with JP.
And Stacy D. Ooh, I love the way I sound.
I'm JP Craddock and I am here with the one and only Stacy D. Love Masara. And we are broadcasting here on KUAW Radio, which stands for knowledge, understanding,
And wisdom.
and wisdom. All right. Coming up on the show today, we have our question of the day. But actually, before we get to the question of the day, last week we talked about a sibling, having adult siblings that are still living off of the parents. And it has gotten to the point where the parents are getting real old and the sibling is wondering, like, am I going to inherit this food? And so we talked about that. And I presented two types of siblings that never launch from the home. One are those who are poorly managing their mental health. But we didn't get to the second type, which are the addicts, the drug addicts,
No, we
and
didn't.
alcoholics. Did we cover what to do about them?
You said, I thought, if I remember correctly, kicked them the hell out. And have them get some. You kick down the front door.
Did I say?
Basically, yeah. And also to try to get them into some type of treatment to help them.
Okay. And so here's one last thing. I didn't even remember me saying that. I didn't think we even got to them. But in those instances with the addicted siblings that have failed to launch from the home, they still in the parents' basement, like, hi. A lot of times that is because the parents are enablers. They are enabling the addictive cycle, allowing it to continue. And so the siblings who are in the position of thinking, okay, what are we going to do with this food after my parents pass away?
Actually, that the parents don't want them to leave.
Oftentimes they don't. They are enablers. And you are not going to get that sibling to launch and build a life for themselves unless you start with the parents and explain to them that they are not going to live forever and nobody else is going to be willing to continue to take care of their food. And so what the parents have to do is halt their enabling behaviors, which almost forces a person to save themselves, to get clean, get sober, get a life. But what's the incentive to get clean and sober if you have parents who are kicking you down with money, providing you with a roof over your head, food? You don't have anything to worry about except how you're going to get your next hit. So it starts with those parents. Okay, so that's that. Coming up, our question of the day for this week is, how do I keep ending up in toxic relationships with emotionally unavailable partners? These are relationships that are either toxic and or emotionally unavailable, because sometimes they're just toxic. And people don't necessarily describe them as emotionally unavailable. And then sometimes they're just emotionally unavailable, but it's not toxic. It's like, well, no, my partner isn't abusive. I'm not getting cursed out, humiliated, demeaned, and smacked around. They're just emotionally unavailable because they're in the arms of another person, or they don't know how to communicate and express themselves. They're emotionally detached. They're just emotionally unavailable. And so I wanted to clarify that not everyone who is emotionally unavailable is abusive. Okay, so this is an and/or thing. And so we're going to get to that. And this actually was going to be my mental health and illness in the news story because of an article that I read in Psychology Today. But it's going to take so much time that I decided to combine it, mental health and illness in the news, with the question of the day, because it's going to take us a while to get into that because it talks about all types of relationships, being in relationships with narcissists, with cheaters.
Yep, that's our new word, narcissist.
It is. It's because of Donald Trump that it has
Yeah.
become so common. Because everybody really started researching it after Trump was in office, and a lot of people are coming in and saying that their partners are narcissistic. Now, here's what's interesting. Oftentimes, when I say, okay, describe your partner to me, they're kind of right. It's like, oh, you got yourself a damn narcissist on your hands.
Be careful.
Yeah, it's anytime people start researching something, all of a sudden everybody has it. It's like ADHD. Because, you know, back in the day, they used to say, well, only kids have ADHD and they outgrow it when they get older, which is not true.
No, they don't.
No. They've just learned to manage it as adults.
I'm here.
But now everybody is like, I got ADHD. I'm always telling my friend, I got frat brothers who do not have ADHD. I got ADHD. No, you don't. You trying to make an excuse to keep me from snapping your neck right now.
Tell them to watch our show and they can see ADHD in live drive at 5. Hold on. I cannot work under these conditions.
You hear echo.
No, I'm not worried about the echo.
Oh, because it's driving me crazy.
I'm talking in regards to my co-host who told me we were going to talk about something else, and then I'm sitting here and you done said something else. I have prepared myself to talk about this other subject, and now you just throw this on me.
This is because you don't read your text. Because I sent a text to you and to Mr. Walker saying, oh, scratch that. This is what we're going to talk about today. D, read your see while you sit outside on the phone. Those text
I'll be making business phone calls.
Yes,
they don't be personal.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, I told you, this is going to be a juicier topic. We need to get to this.
Okay,
plus, the D is dating. And
the D is dating?
The D is that you're not dating right now. You're going to be dating. And I want us to talk about how to avoid people who are emotionally unavailable or toxic. Because a lot of the emotionally unavailable people, your cheaters kind of come up under that category.
I think I'm the one that's emotionally unavailable.
That's not
what they've
true.
been telling me.
Who told you that?
A couple of people I was trying
You're the
to
opposite of emotionally unavailable.
They say I work too much. But
that doesn't mean you're emotionally unavailable.
But they're not trying to pay a house note. Or a car note. Or a KCP&L.
Preach! Here's the thing. Here's why I say you're not emotionally unavailable. Because, I've noticed a pattern too. This is not the first time that you said something negative about the D, and then I have to defend the D to the D. Like, what's going on?
Really?
You're not emotionally unavailable because when you are dating someone, you make it clear to them, listen, I am in control of my schedule. I control what my work life looks like. I can rearrange it. I can do this. I can travel. That is you making yourself emotionally available to the point where you kind of make it clear, I'm willing to make the necessary adjustments so that whoever you're in a relationship with does not feel like they are fourth or fifth on the list after work, your kids, and your grandkids.
Well, God.
The kids, the grandkids.
No, God, the grandkids, work, and the kids.
They actually are fifth and sixth on the list. But
yeah, they really are.
But here's the thing. But you do a good job of helping them to not feel that way. Here's something I want people to think about when it comes to relationships, because a lot of times people feel guilty, like I feel guilty my kids come before my partner. I feel guilty that Stop feeling guilty for that, okay? The goal, because you feel how you feel. You can't change it that your children come first. For people who have underage kids and they're dating and they're like, I ain't bringing you home, you ain't meeting my kids, we ain't doing this, we ain't doing that, because my babies come first.
Exactly.
Exactly. here's the thing. You can't change how you feel, so don't feel guilty or apologetic for it. The goal is to not make a person feel as if they are fifth or sixth in line, even though they may be. Just like parents' goal is to make all their kids feel loved.
Exactly.
Even parents who have a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
The goal
But you shouldn't
is
have a favorite.
your kids should be debating that they are the favorite. That means that you have been successful.
3 out the 4 feel like that with me.
So your stats are 75%.
That's pretty good, isn't
That,
it?
I mean, it's a C.
Yeah,
That's good enough.
it is.
Because my stats are not that good, unfortunately.
You only have 3. Ooh, what is it? 33%?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah. My stats are not that good. I think they were before some things imploded. But, some things imploded because, adoptions get complicated. That's all I'm going to say. Adoptions get complicated. But if your kids are debating, I'm the favorite. No, I'm the favorite. No, you have been successful. Just sit back and smile like
And
all
that's
these
what I
fools feel like they're the
That they
favorite.
feel like
And
they're the
that's
favorite.
how it's supposed to be. Well, when you dating a person, that person just, they can be fifth or sixth long as they don't really know. And I think you do a good job of, I don't know, in knowing someone that you dated. He didn't really express that he felt like he was fifth or sixth in line. I know you thought that he may have felt like work came before him, but I don't think you did that. You were willing to adjust your schedule. So I
Yeah.
don't think you're emotionally unavailable. Whoever told
Well,
you that
work
needs to
has
shut up
gotten
because they're
to be
incorrect.
a lot more now. I'm actually looking for a full-time administrative assistant.
We've been looking for
I
administrative
know. I'm
assistants.
looking for a full-time one now. Okay, so this is how
You need a
the
practical
conversations
student.
happen. Monday, I am doing payroll,
Mm-hmm.
and for the Tuesdays, I'm doing payroll.
Mm-hmm.
So don't call me on Mondays and Tuesdays. I'll call you when I get home. Don't call me at 7:00 and be like, "You still at the office? Hey, why don't you bring me something to eat?"
Which would be the sweet thing to do.
Exactly.
Bring you some food
Bring
and
you
then
some
go
food.
sit down on the couch somewhere
Because
while
I have
you work.
a couch in
Don't
the
disturb
office.
you.
Yeah.
Feed you.
Exactly. Then they say, "I'm running behind you, and I got all these women running behind me." I'm like, "Well, you better
Then go
be
run
run
behind them.
them."
Right. Go. Why are you having this conversation with me when you're supposed to be running behind these women or letting the women who's running behind you catch you?
Catch you.
The fact that a person said that means that they're not a good fit. That in and of itself was a red
Exactly.
flag. And
And that's why they bye bye
people,
now.
men and women, ignore red flags thinking it's going to change. I can change
It's
this
not.
person. No. And at our age, as soon as you see a red flag, because when you're in your 20s, you might delay on eliminating somebody because of a red flag. But at this point, you ain't got enough time on the clock left to be putting up with red flags for 10 years.
Mr. Walker, did you hear him say I don't have enough time on the clock?
Well, hell, we over 50, D. I mean, I ain't saying the D can't live to be
I
100.
got enough time on the clock.
Listen,
One foot in the grave.
I'm not saying the D. I'm just saying we too old for that. You have plenty of time on the clock because Patti LaBelle's still dating, and she's like, what,
80.
78, 80?
Real close
right.
to 80.
So you got plenty of dating time, but you don't have time for that mess.
I don't. And that's why I cut it.
And that's a red flag, and that person needed to go.
Just don't answer the phones. I don't even have to break up.
And that was a sign of insecurity because a person who's secure within themselves wouldn't look at it as if you were being emotionally unavailable. They would look at it as if you have good prioritization skills. You're an entrepreneur, and payroll is due.
I'm a real hustler.
And people need, if you are upset about somebody doing payroll, knowing that their employees need to pay their rent, pay their utilities, feed their kids, so you want me to delay providing people with their livelihood after they have provided me with the service that I hired them to do.
Exactly.
So I didn't delay them working for me in order to hang out with you, but now you want me to delay paying them to hang out with you. Hell no.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with people's numbers, I don't have time to talk. Sorry, I can't talk now. That's the text you get. And you know what
Right.
I'm doing, especially if we've been talking
That's a
for
nice
a
text.
month or so. You already know. I'll let you know up front. Monday and Tuesdays are hard for me. Then
Right.
I had one guy get upset because everyone know I don't sleep at night. After everything gets situated, I'm returning emails and phone calls and texts.
Handling business. Yes, yes.
I'll call him like at 1 o'clock in the morning.
What's wrong with that?
I don't appreciate you calling me at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, damn,
I'm
don't
like, this
answer
is
the phone.
prime time, booty time.
I don't know if you can say.
Can we say that on the air?
Yeah.
How often have you found yourself asking Mr. Walker after saying something? Can we say that on the air?
Well, he didn't appreciate
Prime
the
time,
1
booty
o'clock,
time.
the 12 o'clock calls. He was like,
Then stop.
you can't make time for me during the day. No, I can't.
Stop dating
And
an
you're
entrepreneur.
up too.
Stop dating a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, a professional. Even if a person
They want it, but they can't handle it.
because deep down inside they don't have a level of security. They're too insecure to handle it.
Me.
So you calling after you've finished working, after you've taken care of payroll or whatever it is that you're taking care of, and then all they had to do was say, listen, I understand that you just got off. I got to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. We can't talk right now. Okay.
But he's an entrepreneur too.
Well, he might start
Which I thought
early
that
in the
would have been
morning.
a better, little better combination, but it wasn't.
Well, I will say this on his behalf. Most people are not up late like that. Like our friend Terry, she is in the bed at probably 10 or 11.
I know she called me at 10, yawning and everything. I'm like, girl, I'm gonna be up for about 4 more hours.
Yeah.
She's like, D, bye.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds just like her too.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I understand that people go to bed early. I still send texts. I don't call people, but I will still send a text. Except to her, because she always answers her phone. She always responds to text, no matter what she's
It
doing.
wakes her up.
And at 2 in the morning, she'll respond to a text fussing that you
Yes.
texted her, and I'm like, "Why is your phone on?" Okay, but that guy, he's insecure, and him wanting you to take time from work to make time for him is speaking to some unmet needs that he has, that he needs to meet within himself, as opposed to expecting you to fill that void.
And it was really bad because he was like, what, 62 years old?
Too damn old for them silly games. Okay, let's get to our check-in. What's your check-in, D?
I guess we already did it. Oh, but I do want to
That was a good check-in.
It was a good check-in. But I just want to give props. I was on a panel this weekend, 50 Shades of Conversation. It was lovely. I enjoyed it. 50 Shades, yeah. It was real good. I went in not knowing anything and walked out. I was like, whoo, this was such a great experience. So thank you for the opportunity to do that, Shanda Moore. Love you. Thank you. Checked on all the women. They're doing well. So that was a check-in.
Can you briefly talk about the topic of the panel discussion?
Basically, the
Because
topic.
there's going to be more of them coming.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Right? Okay.
This panel discussion was dealing basically with the trauma of women, and it was all about I am my sister's keeper. That's what I said. I am my sister's keeper. And it was just dealing with all the women. They had 2 minutes to speak about all the trauma they had. And it was only one lady who said she didn't have any trauma. She was the good life. She was the end of it. She was the good life. Like we had a young lady who, it was one young lady, her mother left her and her siblings with her father. He was a heroin addict. And she was 5 years old being sold to whoever.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was one young lady who was married to a minister and was basically going through hell. It was one young lady who was married to a man for over 20 years who just really basically was not emotionally there, never put his hands on her. He was actually a big fire chief. And
Emotionally unavailable.
He was emotionally unavailable, very disrespectful to her in public. And guess what God did to him? Laid him on his back.
Really?
Yeah. He had a real bad stroke and couldn't even wipe his butt, couldn't do nothing.
She had to wipe.
And despite all of that, and and he was even there because guess what? He had to be there because he can't stay home alone.
This is a movie.
It, Diary of
Angela
a Mad
Bassett.
Black Woman.
Was
or
it
something
Angela
like, it was
Bassett?
one of the Tyler Perry movies.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but she can't even stay at home by herself, so he was there, and in front of everyone, he said, "I knew it was a dog, and I apologize, and I love you, and I'm so sorry for it," and that just really made me emotionally just like, wow. And I don't know have you ever said it before, but you could just feel the emotion in the room of all the different women for him to be able, because he was the only man there.
This was intense.
It was very intense, and he said that he's sorry. He said, "I love you. I wish I could go back in time and do something different." He even said that he wasn't in love with his wife. He was in love with his first baby mama, but that wife was such a good one that he wasn't gonna let it get away from him, basically.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
And it was just like, wow. And actually, from that,
That's intense.
KCC student council, student something just asked me
Kansas
to come.
City, Kansas Community College.
City,
For
Kansas
those
Community
of you
College.
not from the area,
Right. They just asked me to come and speak to their student union. I'm like, what the hell am I going to say?
oh, that's good.
I'm like, they really shouldn't want me to speak because I
The Black Student Union or the regular student
I
union?
think he said the whole student union.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say because they don't know what might come up out of my mouth.
We never do.
He said that he was just really moved from my introduction because I told him I was like, I was having so much fun in the trauma. I didn't even know I was in trauma. Then must not have been trauma. I don't.
That's it. We could do a whole show. We need to do a whole show on that statement.
Mm-hmm.
I was having so much fun in the trauma that I didn't know I was in the trauma. That is so possible. Because that, well, I ain't even going to get into that.
Don't
right
get
now.
into it. We're going to save it.
Can we do
Right.
a whole show on
You need to
that?
write it down.
Because you're going to forget, even though you
I say it
it.
all the time.
Then I don't need to write it down, but we need to cover that.
Mhm.
I love how that's worded. So you're going to talk on that to the student body?
Mhm.
I like that.
He was just like, my story was so phenomenal that he never heard of anyone's story like that. It's my life.
Are you working on that book?
Yeah. Well, I haven't wrote on it in a long time. But you said we about to start another book.
Yeah, but it's going to be
Together.
a while before we can get to that. That's going to be easy. That's just quotes from the show. And
That's gonna be really good. And how'd you like
and
the
my phone
the
will just
postcard I
automatically
sent you?
type them up. If I play the show, the phone will just type them up
Really?
into Word.
Oh, that's what's up. How'd you like the picture that I gave you? How did you like that, Mr. Walker? Our picture was pretty good. It was pretty dope. The last one, she finally finished all the corrections in it. I didn't get it I didn't have it by Saturday, but oh well, we still have it.
I kind of want to do this next week.
Hmm.
This topic. The pen. I can't work under these conditions.
I
got that
keep
from you,
telling
D.
this. KUAW is
Hold
doing
on.
something
And
to us.
Can I have some Kleenex? That was a really powerful. That was a really powerful statement because sometimes people realize afterwards, oh my God, that was trauma, and they didn't realize it at the time. I'm still on that because that was in and of itself. We got to cover that.
And then
Okay.
it was another therapist there because there was two therapists on the panel. And the other therapist was like, we were born into trauma. It's in our DNA.
A lot of people were, yes. We're going to talk about that a little bit coming up.
Oh,
on
really?
our
Okay,
question
then.
of the day.
Well, let's move on then.
Okay. Here's my check-in real quick. How much time? Oh, we got time. Okay. Because we need to get to the QOD at the half-hour mark. We need to do better. It landed on QOD around the half-hour
We have 4
mark.
minutes.
Okay, and so my check-in is, this is kind of funny. My baby does not understand race with
Good.
regards to color. And so she doesn't understand why people who are brown are called black. Because her perspective is they're not black, they're brown.
And my Crayolas is not saying that.
And she's never really seen anybody who was black, okay? We'd have to take her, like, I don't know, to the motherland. Because, you know, Massa was all up in the cabins.
Well,
and
tell
so
her to come on over up
lightened over
north
the
to the
years.
Walmart and see. That's where I think all the Africans live. It's up
Okay.
north at that Walmart on Berry Road.
Really? Okay. Because
They're black like this.
what she sees as African Americans, due to, as I said, oh, thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, you know, I'm just giving you a hard. I'm just, Mr. Walker, being nice. I was messing with him. Okay. But yeah, due to, over the course of generations, we now come in all shades. Because Massa was, while labeling slaves as animals, was willing to have sex with them, was willing
Most
to rape
definitely.
them, but they weren't having sex with other animals. So deep down inside, they always knew that we were not animals. Otherwise, they
This
would
one
have
that's under
they would have
them.
been engaging in bestiality. So you wasn't having sex with your horses and your pigs. You having sex with the slaves, but they're animals, okay? And not just the master, but the female master mistress. She was in the cabin.
That ain't
also.
my baby.
Right, she's on slave cabin roll also. And the baby came out black, and Massa
Who baby is
beat
that?
her half to death. Right. Why is that baby black? And so Sashi, she doesn't get it. And so she's like, they're brown. And so Nadine was having a conversation with her and asked Sashi, well, what color are you, Sashi? And she says, I'm brown. And she said, what color is Daddy? She said, Daddy's brown. She said, what color is Mommy? Mommy's yellow. Yeah. My baby.
From the mouth of babes.
And so last night, because she loves Michael Jackson's Remember the Time video. So last night, she says to me, Daddy, I want to see yellow Michael Jackson.
So she done seen the brown Michael Jackson.
She know which video she likes. She's like, I don't like that one. I want the yellow Michael Jackson. And I played it. And and as I was looking at it, I was like, his tone was literally yellow. And so I told Nadine, I said, I can't wait to ask her what color is her TT. Because my sister's light. Okay.
She's a light bright.
She gonna say TT's white. Or some type of real light cream. Okay, so yeah, that's my check-in. That my point is, I wish that the whole world had the mentality of a 4-year-old when it comes to race, where we do not divide, because she doesn't do division. If she is at an activity that is predominantly white, she's not affected by that at all. She doesn't see the difference in the races, which is interesting, because we were riding in the car and she had ABC Mouse. She's doing her ABC Mouse and I was listening to music and I turned it down and she had pulled up Madam C.J. Walker and was listening to the lesson on Madam C.J. Walker.
Really?
And then she listened to a lesson on someone else, I can't remember who it is, and listened to it like 3 times. Who was the first black millionaire? A female was the first black millionaire.
There wasn't that Madam C.J. Walker?
It wasn't Madam C.J. Walker. There was
wasn't?
someone before her who
Can you look that up, Mr. Walker?
created hair products called Poro. And she started out selling, she learned chemistry in high school. And she, I can pull it up on ABC Mouse. She learned chemistry in high school and developed her own hair products. And she helped to create wealth for other black women by teaching them how to demonstrate the hair care oh, it's Women's History Month. It's going to be hard for me to find it.
Was it Sarah Rector?
What was the name?
Sarah Rector?
That's not it. Who else you got in there, Mr. Walker?
She got hers through OL.
Yeah, actually, there have been several black female millionaires
In the early
who
1900s.
created hair products in the late 1800s and early 1900s, which is fascinating how many.
It is.
That's an entrepreneurial spirit that those women knew. Oh, okay, there's a need for my people. They need their hair done. And for generations, black women have not played about getting their hair done. Black women gonna spend money on her hair. So you want to make some money?
Invest.
Do something that has something to do with a black woman's hair. Okay, question of the day. Mr. Walker, let us know if you figure out that name. Because it was a name that I had not heard of before. It's not a common name like Madam CJ. Everybody knows Madam CJ. Yeah, this was not a common name. This is Women's History Month. So, D, you probably should come up with a little something for Women's History Month. Let me know if you need to see ABC
Okay.
Mouse.
I know,
They got
right?
about a ton of women in there. Yeah. But my baby, she was learning black history, but she doesn't, to her, it's black history, but she's like, these people are brown.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they're not black? And she'll say, they're not black, they're brown. I say, okay. Okay, baby. All right. So, let's get to, you know what? Oh, man. I have a problem.
And what's the problem?
Hold on. Let me pull this up. Let me get rid of ABC Mouse. Okay. I'm going to have to pull this up because I did not print off all of it. I know it. I know it. That's me tripping. Okay, let me find this. Okay, so I came up with this topic from an article in Psychology Today, 4 ways that childhood invalidation leads to feeling unsafe in adulthood. And this was written by Dr. Tanas Guru, Annie. We're going to call her Dr. Annie because I probably just butchered her name. And so what this talks about is how what a person experiences in childhood plays itself out in adulthood. For some people, they become really healthy in their adult relationships because what they witnessed in childhood. But in other people, they either become those parents or they exhibit the negative effects of that parenting.
That's true.
Okay. And so one of the things that it talks about is that a person's adult romantic relationships are oftentimes imitations of what was modeled for them in childhood, yes. And that feeling unsafe as a child can cause a person to generalize and choose romantic partners that end up making them feel unsafe. And here's the reason why. Because the feeling unsafe part is when you have parents that are emotionally unavailable or abusive or erratic or whatever, the child is basically on their own as opposed to growing up having a healthy dependence on the parent. They're basically raising themselves emotionally and psychologically. The parent may be providing food and shelter, but they're not providing what a kid needs on the inside. And so they just become accustomed to not having it. And they end up gravitating towards partners who are also emotionally unavailable without realizing it. But they're doing it because that's all they know. It's normal. Kind of like us being raised here in America. We can move to Australia, but we are basically going to be Americans in Australia. We're still going to have and American approach to entrepreneurship, to just our daily lives, even though we're in Australia. Now, after a while, we can begin to adopt the culture that we are currently living in Australia. But at first, if we're not consciously aware of it, the D is still going to be handling business the way the D handles business in America. Even though in Australia, they may have a totally different approach. They may take 2 or 3 hour lunch breaks in the middle of the day.
And a lot of times they do.
Mm-hmm.
They have a whole entirely different concept
Yes.
about things.
Yes. And so you would probably eventually adjust your work schedule to accommodate a 2 hour lunch break. But when you first get there, you're going to be, and I actually have a client who is temporarily working in Australia. He is working the same way he work here. Like, because he's an American. And so, that whole thing. If chaos was learned as being normal in childhood, a person may feel comfortable
In chaos.
in chaos, basically. That's because that's what's normal for them. And so what this psychologist was talking about is that there are basically 4 common ways that childhood emotional invalidation can affect a person in adulthood. One is impulsivity is seen as exciting. If you live in a household with negative excitement, okay, the parents might snatch each other up and throw things against the wall. They breaking glass against the wall and slapping and punching, and
Chaos.
it's chaos. But in a child who grows up in that environment, they're accustomed to it, and they'll combine excitement with chaos and may cross the line. So that something that they interpret as being exciting is actually chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are in a relationship with someone who is not accustomed to that, it can cause that person a lot of anxiety, because they're like,
What
What-
the hell is going on
what is
here?
going on here? Why is our lives chaotic? And then the person's like, it's exciting. You don't think this is exciting? No. You brought home a stranger for me to have sex with? That's not exciting. That's chaos.
How did you go from throwing stuff against the wall to bringing a stranger home having sex with? It's just not okay. This
Well,
JP, y'all.
this isn't alignment with what I said. This is what I meant when I said sometimes they don't become the parents, but they exhibit the effects of that parenting. So this person may not actually beat their spouse like their parents beat each other, but they find chaotic things to be exciting. And they're impulsive, but it's recklessness. There's a difference between being impulsive and being reckless.
Most
There's a
definitely.
difference between excitement and chaos. But
Exactly.
sometimes these children who have grown up, they don't know the difference. And it's very difficult for their partner to deal with and to live with that. Okay? And so another thing that they may do impulsively is discard relationships really quickly. Because they grew up in an impulsive, chaotic environment. And so at the slightest sign that the relationship isn't going well, that they're going to be abandoned, they're like, we're done, we're through. And then we'll
Don't answer the
immediately,
phone.
and then ghost the person, and then immediately jump into another relationship with somebody else, and may even like marry that person within 3 or 4 months.
Oh wow. Well, hell, you say we got to hurry. We run out of time.
D, I didn't really mean it like that. Okay, here's another thing that these adult kids from those types of family households may find it difficult to not be in a relationship as well. Okay, even if the relationship is toxic or dangerous, because they grew up with emotionally unavailable parents and in a toxic environment, but they still had them there. It just was unhealthy. So the option of being alone or leaving someone who is abusive or chronically cheating or whatever, they're like, that was not really the option. My parents, they just stayed together and fought until one of them died. Like,
So they couldn't fight anymore.
until they couldn't fight. They was
But
too
they
old to
do.
fight.
But they do. But they do.
They do.
They continue fighting.
How?
I had two older Americans. They were married. Their children told me that they fought all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they was in two hospital beds, and they were throwing stuff at each other.
Old people still fighting.
Yeah.
Like how old? 70s? 60s, 70s?
No, they was like in their 80s.
Still. This
Yes.
is interesting.
Yes.
Because most violent people get too old to be violent after a while.
Well, they didn't. And they were both in hospital beds. And the only thing separated them was like a little nightstand. And they would take stuff off the nightstand and she'll, like, take her water. Like, they had to start putting her water into, like, a pitcher
Right.
instead of a glass. Because she would take her water and throw it on her husband.
And she was so old, the glass would slip out her hand and she'd throw the whole glass at him.
Yeah, he'll get the whole glass. Yeah.
This is interesting.
And he would, like, here go the funny part is, he would
That
take
was
off
funny.
his pamper and throw it on her.
Ooh.
It was, like, a lot.
Not his pamper.
Yeah, his brief. I'm sorry, they're not Pampers. They're grown Americans. But
Depends.
His
These are depends.
He would take off his
Yes.
Depend and throw it
And
at her.
throw it full of pee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my Lord. I'm traumatized from hearing that.
Yeah,
But you notice they were still
they
together.
were still
Them two
together.
fools are ride or die.
ride or die.
And so their kids would be at risk of being ride or die no matter how horrible the relationship is, because they're like, leaving isn't even an option.
Not an option.
Do people leave these relationships? People don't leave. You just stick it out and be those 80-something-year-old people fighting in the hospital throwing pissy pampers. Depends. Okay. And so that is one way that people can be affected by that, is that in these situations, self-protective measures, protecting yourself from abuse and harm, that part is missing from them because they didn't see that either growing up. This whole topic made me think about some of my most endearing, lovable, kind, gentle-spirited male clients who are in abusive relationships with either women who are just abusive or they're narcissistic, so they're psychologically abusive, emotionally unavailable. I've always seen women in this predicament, but now that therapy is acceptable for men over the past like 5-10 years, now all these men are coming to therapy and they are experiencing it, and they struggle or do not leave these relationships. And so I have one particular client who I love this client to death, but it is so hard to get him to stop choosing these types of women to be in relationships with, because he doesn't have a self-protective factor. Because when you grow up in a home where there's chaos and abuse and toxicity, it doesn't send the kid the message that they are worth or of value either. So they
That's
don't
true.
value themselves enough to separate themselves from another person's abuse. Their parents instill a sense of self-worth and self-esteem in their children because we elevate our kids and we teach them that they are wonderful and incredible and nobody better not put their hands on them. They better not mistreat you. You ain't gonna put up with this. You ain't gonna put up with that. Da da da. When you say those things to your kids, you are instilling self-esteem and self-worth. But kids who are growing up in homes with emotionally unavailable parents or abusive parents, they're not getting those lessons. So when they end up in an abusive or a toxic or emotionally unavailable relationship, and then the therapist says to them, you deserve better than this. Nobody should be treating you this way. You are a wonderful person. Why do you think that you should tolerate this? And they're like, really? I didn't look at it. I didn't
Better?
think I deserved better. I've never had better. I was never taught that I shouldn't be treated this way. How could my parents who treated me this way teach me that I shouldn't be treated this way? And so that's how they end up stuck in these relationships. Here's the next component of this. Unpredictability is seen as normal. If you grow up in a household where there's a lot of unpredictability, spontaneous things happening, you come home, the lights are off.
Is that spontaneous? You did
Well,
not
for the
pay
kid
the
it
bill.
is. The parent knew that they hadn't paid the bill. But to the kid, they're like, the lights are off? There's an eviction notice on the door? And so that becomes normal for them,
you
and
know
they
what?
carry it out
That
in their
is normal
relationships.
because I had a duplex. Well, I still had a duplex, and my children told me that the neighbors, the oldest child, when he went home, the first thing he was supposed to do was flick the lights, and if it didn't come on, he was to immediately to call his mother.
So she could call and pay the bill.
And my kids like, Mama, why he always got? I'm like, I just left it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want them to go back. It's like, your mama don't pay your light bill.
Right.
So I didn't, yeah.
And she knew she hadn't paid it, and she was pushing it, hoping they wouldn't turn it off before she could pay it. And sometimes they did. And so then he would call, and she would scrape up the money somehow. Right. If unpredictability is learned in childhood, it can generalize to the person's adult choosing of their partners. So if they do not exhibit it, they will choose people who are unpredictable. Okay? Because remember what I said, kids who grow up in unhealthy environments, they either become the parents or they end up choosing people who are
Like
younger versions of the parents. And so they end up choosing somebody who treats them the same way that either they were treated or they saw their other parent being treated in the relationship. Okay. And they will even attract people because people who are almost predatory, they know how to spot a good victim.
Yes, they do.
They can sense somebody who's going to put up with that crap from them. And this is how, when I see people who have been in multiple abusive relationships, I have to work with them on seeing how they are sending out that vibe that attracts those predators. What things they are doing early on in the relationship that brings forth those kind of people. And sometimes it's simple things like ignoring the red flags. Like you ignore certain red flags, that lets a person who is the red flag know, ooh, I can get this off on this person. Which is the reason why I was saying before, when you see a red flag, you need to eliminate like that mess immediately. Because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets any better. Okay, next, toxic relationships are chosen as comfortable, of course, as we said, because that's what the person is used to. And so it's like, well, this is all I've ever known. And what I oftentimes see is that if they end up in a relationship with someone who is psychologically and emotionally healthy, they have a lot of anxiety because it's so foreign to them. And they're like, this person cannot be this good. They cannot be this nice. I'm waiting on the other shoe to drop. And they have this. And then they actually end up sabotaging the relationship.
They do.
Because they can't handle it.
Can't
So they
handle
start picking fights. And it's like, why are you picking fights with somebody who don't want to fight?
Don't want to fight.
I don't know. Let's talk
Or
about
they'll
it.
do behaviors that they know that the other person will be like, do a left eye to him and say, what?
Right. And if the other person is a non-chaotic, non-toxic person, they don't end up reacting that way, which causes the person even more anxiety.
You don't care about me.
Right. Because in their mind, people who love each other fight. Now, I done did all this to you and you still refuse to fight with me? Because my mom and daddy fought. And so the other person who's healthy is like, you know what? This isn't working for me because I didn't know you was crazy.
Capital C-R
And
and Z-Z-Z-Z-Y.
You want me to fight with you? Because I wasn't raised to fight.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you want me to snatch you up? And I don't.
You want me to do what?
I don't do that. And they feel uncomfortable because they're being asked to be unhealthy in ways that they were not raised to be.
Exactly. You really don't want this gangster to come out.
Right.
Leave that gangster sleep.
And so they end up having to exit the relationship, and then the other person is like, I knew they was going to leave me. No, it became self-fulfilling prophecy. You
Yes.
pushed them away because you was trying to recreate the chaos that you experienced in childhood. But then if the person would have snapped and slapped you,
It would've
then
been
they'd have been
fine.
wrong for that, because it's like, I knew they was going to slap. I knew he was too good to be true.
But at least I know you love me.
At least I know. And they won't leave
And
after
they won't
that.
leave. Mm-mm.
Because they have gotten slapped. This is such a unhealthy dynamic
Yes.
that plays itself out so often. And so it becomes, it becomes comfortable, and people end up going from one relationship after another with this dynamic repeating itself. Okay. And so here's the next one. Self-betrayal feels familiar. Self-betrayal, because I just talked about not having self-protective behaviors, not protecting oneself, but also betraying oneself by entering into unhealthy relationships, but it feels normal to do so. And this is also connected to the parental invalidation, because the child was not taught that they have self-worth. Okay. And so in this article, I'm going to put it on our Facebook page for people to check this out. But it kind of talks about that, and it gives the example: if a child has been conditioned to rely upon themselves because the parents were emotionally unavailable, then they're going to be willing to enter into a relationship with somebody who's emotionally unavailable, because they're like, well, nobody's ever been emotionally available to me. And so I've always had to just rely upon myself. This can also result in attracting toxic, abusive, and narcissistic personalities. And we talked about narcissism before. And I really think that it increases the risk when it comes to, because a narcissist in a relationship, they still come first. That's a narcissist.
Always.
They always come first, and they want what they want. And if you stand in between them and what they want, that's when they're going to be willing to hurt you, because how dare you deny them what they want. So a person who has grown up in childhood with emotionally unavailable parents or in a toxic environment, they are going to be, that kind of personality type is going to feel normal to them. And so they will sometimes end up in multiple relationships with narcissists, like one after the other. And so then when I'm trying to work with them on it in therapy and say, this person is exhibiting some severe narcissism, and they are willing to harm you to get what they want, because they come first, and you are never, your mental health is never going to be more important than whatever they want, whether it is your money, whether it is your time and wanting you to sacrifice work, because that's what is common with my male clients, is that the women will want the money from the job, but they don't want the man to go to work.
Don't want him to go to work.
Which becomes a no-win situation for them, because they are on them. You work all the time because you're not putting me first, because you're not here. But how dare you not bring home the money that I want to go out and blow it?
At the boat.
Or anywhere, because they're impulsive and chaotic. And like I said, if it's a child who grew up in that environment who is not mimicking those behaviors, they end up dating someone else who does. And so they end up with this younger version of their parent who is recklessly spending their money while also torturing them for being gone making the money. And
It doesn't make no sense.
It doesn't make any sense,
make no
because
sense.
it puts them in a position where they're like, this is a no-win situation.
No win.
She's demanding that I be here for her all the time, but she's demanding that I have the money for her to impulsively shop.
The boat.
and spend our bill money on clothes, gambling, the boat, all these
A
different
lot of
things.
them are really, it's the boat.
We could have we could have a full therapy practice at the casinos.
Exactly.
For those who are not around here, when the D says the boat, she's talking about the casinos. She's talking about gambling addictions. And it's so much therapy to do at the casinos. They need to rent office space to
They do.
There's not enough time to do all the therapy that can be done at the boat, at the casinos. Okay. And so let's talk about the cycle of self-betrayal where their needs continue going unmet. And many of these people find themselves in a pattern where they also express higher levels of people-pleasing behaviors. And this is so common. The clients I see in this position, they will do anything to please that abusive partner, that emotionally unavailable partner, because in their mind, they're like, I still have to hold on to this person because leaving isn't an option. And so they overextend themselves to stay in the relationship. They are people pleasers to a fault. Because I think a lot of us want to please people. I think it's natural to want people to be happy, but anything times 10 becomes a bad thing. So wanting to make people happy is okay. Wanting to make people happy times 10 is you sacrificing yourself and your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health in order to please a person. Not having boundaries, being willing to betray yourself and sacrifice yourself for that person. And a narcissist is going to demand that you do that. They're like, you better sacrifice yourself for me. Who you? Don't make me come over there and hurt you.
Exactly.
And so, this article talks about healing from it, and they basically say, in therapy is a place to identify what it is in your adult life that is connected to your childhood. Have you chosen these unhealthy partners because you're used to being treated this way because your parents were toxic and emotionally unavailable? And so now you entering into relationships with people because it feels familiar. Just like if an American goes to Australia, they're going to gravitate towards some things that are American. That's why McDonald's is all over the world. Mm-hmm. And when people travel to other countries, a lot of times they go to McDonald's. And I don't even like McDonald's, but when I saw McDonald's in Greece, I was like, I don't want to eat there. We got that at home.
That's how I am when I go out, when I travel. I do not want anything that I can
get at home.
Nothing.
Americans are always up in McDonald's in other countries and talking about how different it tastes.
Retarded. I don't want to taste the difference.
I don't want to know that it tastes. And so it's kind of like that in relationships. People grew up in unhealthy environments and then they gravitate towards that even though healthy options exist. The key to this isn't an article, this is just me saying this. The key to this is helping them
unplug and retrain yourself.
Yes, and instill self-worth and self-esteem. And so if you are a therapist seeing these clients, you have to help them to realize how much worth and value they have. That even though their parents did not see their worth and their value, that they have worth and value, and they don't have to continue to relive their childhood traumas by entering into relationships with people who are basically their parents.
All over again.
Right.
You have to break the cycle.
And what makes it so heartbreaking is, as I said, these are my most lovable, endearing clients. And you know what? One said to me today, a female client who said, you should do a speed dating thing. Did we not talk about that?
Yes, we did.
Because I have always said I have all these incredible, lovable, endearing, sweet men and women that I see in therapy who
You
are
have one
in.
about 55, 56, 57 for me.
Huh?
Have one about between 55 and 59 for me.
Yes.
Okay, make it happen, Cap.
Who are, but I do, who are in relationships with demons.
With demons.
And I really do. We've talked about this, but we really need to make it happen. I know we need to go. Let me wrap this up. Because I just wish there was a way for me to bring all these sweet people together
The number one matchmaker.
so that they can meet other sweet people. But first, they have to get to a point in therapy where they don't reject those people because they're still gravitating towards versions of their parents. Okay, that's our show for today. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, worry about nothing.
And pray about everything.
Thank you and
Bye-bye
God
now.
bless.